The moment still echoes in my ears, sharp and sudden, like something breaking that could never be fixed again. Get out of the pool. My mother's voice sliced through the thick, humid air, louder than the music, louder than the laughter, louder than anything that had felt safe just seconds before. She stood tall on the wide obsidian deck, a glass of champagne resting casually in her hand, her other hand raised as she pointed directly at my 5-year-old daughter. Her nails were perfect, her posture flawless, her expression cold. "You look like divorced failures," she said under her breath, though not quiet enough. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the silver-haired man beside her, the president of the Homeowners Association, as if his opinion mattered more than anything else in that moment. "You are ruining the aesthetic. Get out now." For a second, I couldn't move. Everything inside me froze. My son, Ethan, let go of his pool noodle. It slipped from his small hands and floated away, forgotten. His lower lip trembled, and his eyes filled with confusion that no 7-year-old should ever have to carry. My daughter clung to me, her tiny fingers gripping my arm. Her joy from just moments ago completely gone. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't give her the scene she probably expected. Instead, I bent down quietly, gathered my children close, wrapped them in their towels, and walked away without saying a single word. Water dripped from our clothes, leaving a trail behind us across the driveway she cared so much about. Each footprint felt heavier than the last, like proof of something finally ending. The drive home was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Mia sat in the back seat, her small voice breaking between hiccups as she kept asking the same question again and again, why Grandma didn't want us at the party. Ethan didn't say anything at all. He just stared out the window, his face too still, too quiet. That kind of silence, it costs more than anything money can fix. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and kept driving. 40 minutes felt like forever. By the time we reached home, the world felt different, smaller, colder. Our house wasn't anything special. Just a simple 3-bedroom place. No grand views, no shining deck, no expensive charm. But it was mine. Fully mine. And more importantly, it was safe. I got the kids inside, dried them off, and set up a movie for them in the living room. Their soft sniffles slowly faded into the background as the screen lit up with something cheerful, something far removed from what had just happened. I didn't go to the kitchen. I didn't make tea. I didn't call a friend. I didn't need comfort. I needed clarity. So I walked straight to the back room, my office, my space, the one place where things made sense, where emotions didn't control outcomes, where decisions were clean and final. I sat down in my chair and turned on the monitors. The soft blue light filled the room, calm and steady. It washed over everything, replacing the chaos of the day with something structured, something controlled. This was my world. Not the noise, not the drama, but the data. It took me only a few seconds to log in. The system opened, and there it was, at the very top of the list, 100. Obsidian Way. I clicked it. The details appeared instantly, line by line, like quiet evidence that had been waiting all along. Tenant. Angela. Status. Active. Lease type. Family grant. Current rent. $1,240 per month. I stared at that number for a long moment. A waterfront property like that could easily go for $5,000 a month. Anyone in the market knew that. But for years, I had allowed that difference to exist. I told myself it was a gift, a way to give back, a way to show love. But sitting there, in the silence, looking at the truth in front of me, it didn't feel like a gift anymore. It felt like a cost. A cost I had been paying just to be treated like I didn't matter. Hand stayed steady as I moved the cursor. No shaking, no hesitation, no second thoughts about holidays or memories or the fact that she was my mother. I opened the lease actions menu, clicked. Terminate lease. A small box appeared, asking for confirmation. I filled it in without pause. Notice period, 60 days. Reason. Owner discretion. Then I pressed submit. The screen flashed green. Update successful. Notice generated and queued for delivery. And just like that, it was done. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. It wasn't empty. It wasn't uncertain. It was final, like a door closing somewhere deep. never to be opened again. I didn't pick up my phone. I didn't send messages. I didn't explain. There was nothing left to say. Everything that needed to happen had already been set in motion. The decision was made, and somewhere far away, she still didn't know that everything had already changed. To my mother, I was always a disappointment. The daughter who didn't marry into wealth. The single mother with a simple car and simple clothes. The one she spoke about in quiet tones, as if my life was something unfortunate. She never knew the truth. The truth wasn't loud, it wasn't visible. It didn't need to be. 5 years ago, the startup I helped build quietly turned into something massive. When it was acquired, my share didn't just give me comfort, it gave me freedom. After everything settled, I walked away with $3.5 million. I didn't spend it on showing off. I didn't chase attention. I made one decision. I bought 1,400. Obsidian Way, not in my name, not in a way anyone could trace easily. Through layers, through systems, through quiet structures that kept everything hidden, because that house was her dream. I remembered her pointing at it when I was a child, standing on the public beach, talking about how life should have been hers. How she deserved more. I wanted to give that to her. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave her everything she ever wanted, she would finally stop performing for the world. And just be a mother, so I stayed invisible. A landlord she never knew, a support she never acknowledged, a quiet presence. Behind everything she proudly showed off, I pulled up my spreadsheet. Numbers filled the screen. Clear, honest, unemotional, market rent, $4,800 per month. Her rent, $2,440 every single month. I covered the difference, $360 over 5 years. It added up to nearly $200,000 too. $100,000 not for business, not for investment, but for her comfort, for her image, for her ego. I had told myself it was kindness, that this was what family meant. But looking at it now, I finally saw the truth. It wasn't kindness, it was a price. A price I paid to keep peace, a price to avoid conflict, a price for small moments of approval that never really came. And yesterday, at that pool, even that wasn't enough anymore. The notification went out at exactly 10:17 in the morning. I know because I watched it move from sent to delivered cold, simple, automatic. A standard notice, nothing emotional, nothing personal, just facts. Notice to vacate. 100. Obsidian Way, lease terminated. I leaned back in my chair and waited. The first reaction wasn't panic, it was denial. My phone lit. Up, not from her, but from my sister. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't mention the kids. She didn't apologize. Her message was simple. Did you do something? Mom got a weird email from the rental company. She's freaking out. You need to call her and apologize for yesterday. You made her look unstable in front of the HOA, ruining the vibe. That's what mattered to them. Not truth, not kindness, just appearances. Then came the messages from my mother, angry, sharp, blaming, calling me ungrateful, saying I ruined her perfect day, saying the email must be some kind of glitch, that my energy had caused it, that I attracted chaos. For a moment, I almost smiled. She truly believed that something like this could only happen by accident, that consequences didn't apply to her. I didn't reply. There was no point. Instead, I opened Instagram. My sister's story was already live. She stood in the guest lodge, the same place I had paid to renovate, holding a drink, looking perfect, speaking to her followers like nothing had happened. Family drama is so draining, she said with a soft sigh. My sister showed up yesterday looking like a mess. Honestly, it's sad. And her kids were just wild. I watched it. Once, then again, then a third time. Each word clearer. Then the last. She was mocking. Me mocking the person who paid for the roof over her. Head mocking the children who had just been humiliated and sharing it with the world. Then a new notification appeared on my screen. A message from the tenant. Portal.formal, polite, careful, my mother had filed a dispute. This notice is obviously an error. I am the owner's mother. We have an understanding. Please correct this immediately or I will contact my lawyer. I looked at the screen, then at my phone. At the insults, at the demands, at the complete lack of awareness. They were attacking me, while begging someone else for mercy, not realizing it was the same person. In that moment, something inside me settled. Completely. The last bit of hesitation disappeared. This wasn't about family anymore. This was about boundaries, about reality, about actions meeting. Consequences. I closed the apps, ignored the messages, and turned back to the system. The noise could continue. The drama could build, but none of it mattered now because the decision had already been made, and my mother had just claimed she was a partial owner by virtue of family ties. It was a lie. But in the legal world, lies on paper are actionable. I needed physical proof of breach. I navigated to the vendor services tab and selected my property manager, a man named David, who was known for his lack of humor and his attention to detail. I flagged the request as urgent for cause. The cause was simple: evidence of unauthorized commercial activity and potential property damage. I authorized a surprise inspection to occur within 24 hours. The report hit my inbox the next morning at 8:15. It was a PDF file 18 pages long, dense with high-resolution photos. I opened it. The first few images were standard, but page 4 made my jaw tighten. The custom Brazilian walnut floors in the main foyer floors I had hand-selected for their durability and warmth were destroyed. Deep, jagged gouges ran across the grain, the result of moving heavy furniture without protection to clear space for their parties. It wasn't just wear and tear. It was negligence born of entitlement. I scrolled down. Page 12 covered the guest lodge. The space I had designed as a quiet retreat was unrecognizable. Chloe had transformed it into a production studio. There were professional lighting rigs bolted into the drywall, damaging the structure. There were racks of merchandise blocking the fire exits. And there, taped to the wall, was a printed schedule for her influencer boot camp listing ticket prices of $300 per head. She wasn't just living there. She was running an unlicensed commercial enterprise on a residential lease. I didn't feel the sting of betrayal anymore. I felt the cold satisfaction of a prosecutor holding a smoking gun. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a breach of contract. Violations of Clause 9, preservation of premises. Violation of Clause 14, commercial use prohibited. I opened a new document. I didn't compose a daughterly plea. I drafted a notice of lease. Violation and demand for cure. I cited the specific clauses. I attached the photos of the damaged floors with an estimated repair cost of $12,000. I attached the screenshots of Chloe's ticket sales. I didn't ask them to stop. I informed them that their security deposit was forfeit and that they were now liable for damages exceeding $20,000. I converted the document to PDF and uploaded it to the portal. I hit send. They wanted to play games about status and appearances. I was done playing. I was shifting the battlefield from the dining room table to the courtroom. They thought they were fighting a family member they could bully. They were about to realize they were fighting a plaintiff they couldn't afford. The forensic audit provided the ammunition, but the legal review provided the kill shot. My lawyer, a man whose hourly rate exceeded my mother's monthly mortgage payment, called me 48 hours after I sent the damage notice. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He simply asked if I was sitting down, and then he forwarded a file labeled HOA Correspondence Discovery. I opened the document. It was a collection of scanned letters, meeting minutes, and architectural request forms from the Lake House Homeowners Association. I started reading, and the temperature in my office seemed to drop 10 degrees. According to these records, Angela wasn't a tenant. In the eyes of the HOA board, she was the owner. For 4 years, my mother had been attending board meetings, voting on community bylaws, and hosting mixers under the pretense that she held the deed. She hadn't just omitted the truth. She had actively constructed a fraudulent identity. She had introduced herself as the successful investor who bought the property cash. She had accepted praise for her renovations. She had built an entire social hierarchy based on a lie. Then I saw page 14. It was an architectural variance request for the installation of the obsidian deck, the same deck she had kicked my children off of. At the bottom of the page was the signature line for the deed holder. There in looping confident black ink was my name, Jasmine. But it wasn't my signature. It was hers. I stared at the forgery. It was the same handwriting that used to sign my permission slips for school trips. The same handwriting that wrote passive-aggressive birthday cards. She had forged my signature to authorize construction on my house solely so she could play the role of the wealthy matriarch. This is the terrifying mechanics of the illusion of status. To a narcissist like my mother, the house wasn't just shelter. It was a costume. She needed the lake house to validate her existence as a person of substance. Acknowledging me as the owner would have meant acknowledging her own dependency, and that was a psychological death. She wasn't willing to die. So she stole my identity to sustain hers. She wasn't fighting for a roof over her head. She was fighting for the fake reality she had sold to the world. My lawyer's voice cut through my thoughts. Jasmine, he said, forging a signature on a legal document involving real property isn't a family squabble. It is fraud. It is a felony. We aren't looking at an eviction anymore. We are looking at criminal charges. I looked at the screen. I thought about the way she looked at me by the pool. The disgust in her eyes as she called me a failure. She had to believe I was a failure because if I was successful, her entire charade collapsed. She had stolen my name to build a monument to herself. Draft the affidavit, I told him. My voice was steady, void of any daughterly hesitation. And call the sheriff. I want a civil standby for the lockout. We are taking possession. The line between mother and criminal had been blurred for years. Now it was gone completely. She wanted to be the owner. Fine. She was about to find out what happens when the real owner comes home. 60 days came and went. Angela didn't pack a single box. She didn't contact a moving company. Instead, she sent out digital invitations for a summer solstice soiree. It was a power move. She was betting that I wouldn't cause a scene in front of 50 of the town's most influential people. She was betting that her shame would be a shield, that my desire to keep family secrets private would outweigh my legal rights. She was betting on the daughter I used to be, but that daughter didn't own the deed. I pulled up to the gate at 6:15 in the evening. The sun was beginning to dip, casting that golden, expensive light over the water. I wasn't driving my sedan. I was sitting in the passenger seat of a sheriff's department cruiser. Behind us, a locksmith's van idled, ready to work. The deputy, a man named Miller, who had seen the file and the fraud report, looked at me. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's clear the property." We walked around the side of the house. I could hear the clinking of glass and the low hum of jazz music. The party was in full swing on the obsidian deck, my deck. Angela was holding court near the railing, wearing a white linen CF tan, laughing at something the HOA president was saying. Chloe was nearby filming a live stream, pivoting her phone to capture the sunset. It was a perfect picture of a life they hadn't earned and couldn't afford. The music died first, then the conversation. One by one, the guests turned to see the unformed officer walking across the lawn. Angela froze. Her smile didn't fade. It just curdled. She set her drink down and walked toward us, her chin high, her eyes wide with a mix of terror and fury. She was going to play the victim. "Officer," she said, her voice trembling with practiced fragility. "Thank goodness you're here. My daughter is having a mental health crisis. She's obsessed with this house. She's trying to ruin my event because she's jealous." She looked at me with pity, performing for her audience. "Jasmine, honey, please go home. We can talk about your medication later." It was a brilliant performance. But it was happening in a courtroom she didn't control. Deputy Miller didn't look at her. He looked at me. "Ma'am, is this the tenant?" "Yes," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the sudden silence of the yard, it carried to the water. "That is the tenant, and she is trespassing." Angela laughed a sharp, hysterical sound. "Tenant, I am the owner. Everyone knows that I designed this deck. I chose these pavers." She turned to the HOA president. "Bob, tell him. Tell him how much the owner loves what I've done with the place. Hysterics are for people who don't have the paperwork." I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick-bound file containing the deed, the forensic audit, and the fraud affidavit. I placed it on the table next to the hors d'oeuvres. Then I pulled out the master key. It was a heavy brass key that opened every door in the estate. "The owner doesn't love you, Mom," I said. "The owner evicted you 60 days ago." Angela shook her head, backing away. "You're lying. You're a liar. You can't afford this. I bought this house 5 years ago." I said, "I bought it so you would have a place to live. I subsidized your rent. I paid for your repairs. I let you pretend you were wealthy because I thought it would make you happy. But you stole my identity to commit fraud. You forged my signature." I looked at the guests. They were staring at Angela, the realization dawning on them like a cold front. The wealthy matriarch was a squatter. The hostess was a fraud. "I am the owner," I said, pointing to the gate. "And this party is over." Angela looked at the deputy, then at the guests, and finally at me. For the first time in my life, I saw the mask slip completely. There was no grandeur left. Just a small, terrified woman standing on a deck she had stolen, facing the daughter she had underestimated. "Eviction executed," I said to the deputy. "Remove them." It took 3 days for the movers to clear out the staging furniture Angela had rented to make her life look expensive. It took another week for the contractors to repair the floors and repaint the walls, covering the beige grays she loved with a clean, crisp white. I had the house sage cleansed room by room, not because I believe in ghosts, but because I wanted the smell of her desperation gone. Angela is currently living in a 2-bedroom apartment near the interstate. It has no view, no deck, and no audience. The criminal fraud charges are still winding through the court system, but her social sentence has already been carried out. The friends she tried so hard to impress have vanished. Without the stage, the actress has no one to perform for. I spent the first weekend of summer at the lake. I didn't host a gala. I didn't invite the HOA board. I sat on the end of the dock with Ethan and Mia. We dangled our feet in the cool water. We ate chocolate ice cream directly from the carton, letting it drip onto our t-shirts. No one screamed. No one worried about the aesthetic. Looking at the water, I finally understood the difference between us. My mother spent her life screaming to prove she was somebody. She believed that status was a shield, that if she was loud enough and shiny enough, no one would see how empty she felt inside. But wealth whispers. Insecurity screams. True power isn't about owning a zip code or hosting the perfect party. It is the quiet confidence of knowing you are safe. It is the ability to sit in silence without needing to fill it with lies. It is the dignity that comes from building a life you don't need to escape from. I own the deed to 1400 Obsidian Way. But more importantly, I own my peace, and that is an asset that cannot be forged, stolen, or evicted. Real wealth isn't a lake house. It's the freedom to walk away from people who hurt you. If you agree, share this.